although in the future we may pre-record this part of it so you don't have to watch the same thing. You can fast forward. For today's meeting, the chair or staff designated by the chair may mute participants' microphone when they are not under recognition for the purposes of eliminating inadvertent background noise. Members are responsible for muting and unmuting themselves. If I notice that you have not unmuted yourself, I will ask you if you would like the staff to unmute you. If you indicate approval by nodding, staff will unmute your microphone. I remind all members and witnesses that the 5-minute clock still applies. If there's a technology issue, we will move to the next member until the issue is resolved, and you will retain the balance of your time. You will notice a clock on the screen that will show how much time is remaining. At 1 minute remaining, the clock will turn to yellow. At 30 seconds, I will gently tap the gavel to remind members that your time is almost expired. When your time has expired, the clock will turn red, and I will recognize the next member. In terms of speaking order, we will follow the order set forth in the House rules, beginning with the chair and ranking member. Then members present at the time the hearing is called to order will be recognized in order of seniority, and finally, members not present at the time the hearing is called to order. Finally, House rules require me to remind you that we have set up an email address to which members can send anything they wish to submit in writing at any of our hearings or markups. That email address has been provided in advance. This morning, we welcome the Administrator of the Small Business Administration, Isabella Guzman. Administrator Guzman, thank you for being here today. Small businesses are the backbone of the U.S. economy. The United States has more than 30 million small businesses that employ nearly half the country's private workforce. These small businesses were hit hardest in March 2020, when many businesses, including restaurants, live entertainment venues, and gyms, were forced to close or dramatically scale back operations. In response, Congress created several new programs and provided more than $1 trillion in economic relief to small businesses that were impacted. These programs have helped millions of small businesses continue to pay their rent, keep employees on payroll, and stay afloat during these difficult times. Administrator, I thank you and your dedicated staff at the Small Business Administration for your commitment and hard work. I look forward to hearing from you this morning on the challenges SBA has faced to implement these relief programs and the work that remains to help small businesses recover and rebuild. I am pleased to see that since you've taken office, SBA has taken steps to focus its outreach to the hardest hit small businesses and those in underserved communities to ensure fair and equitable access to resources. The fiscal year 2022 budget for SBA builds upon these efforts. The request includes an increase of $31 million for SBA entrepreneurial development programs that support women, people of color, and other underserved small businesses and entrepreneurs, a stark contrast to previous cuts proposed. The request also provides additional resources to support the expansion of federal contracting opportunities for socially and economically disadvantaged small business owners. I'm eager to hear your vision for SBA moving forward and how you will continue to increase support for small businesses and entrepreneurs of all backgrounds. Before I turn to our witness for her statement, I would like to recognize our ranking member, Mr. Womack, for his opening remarks.
Thank you, Chairman Quigley, and welcome to the committee, Administrator Guzman, and congratulations on your confirmation, and many thanks for the time that we spent the other day in our visit. You're leading the SBA at a very challenging time. I'd like to thank all of the SBA staff throughout the country who have been working so hard for over a year to provide critical assistance to America's small business. In fact, just last week, I visited a company in my district, Pruitt Oil and Gas, a 3rd District family-owned company headquartered in Fort Smith. They directly told me that without the PPP program initiated by Congress and run by SBA, they might have grappled with having to close their doors. PPP supported local jobs and that company. Your work on this front is truly appreciated. With the administration only just releasing its budget request today, sometime this afternoon is my understanding, we haven't been able to review all the details of your fiscal 22 request. However, we know SBA is requesting a total of $852 million, which is a 9.4% increase above the fiscal 21 discretionary numbers. I was hopeful that in fiscal 22, with the pandemic, seeing more of the pandemic in a rearview mirror, we could begin to reduce federal spending. Instead, the request calls for a nearly double-digit funding increase to your fiscal 21 discretionary appropriations. With a federal debt in excess of GDP, I think we need to start finding ways to reduce federal spending. In addition to your annual discretionary funds, SBA has been appropriated about $1 trillion to help struggling businesses overcome the economic impact of the pandemic. I know that at the height of the pandemic, it was important to get funding out quickly. However, I think providing protections against waste, fraud, and abuse are very critical, and I hope that you and your OIG are working to prevent fraud and recover funds where fraud has occurred. One pandemic program that I'm particularly concerned with is the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. I understand the program does not require a review of documentation or immigration status. I hope this initiative isn't prioritizing funding for undocumented business owners over business owners living and working in America legally. Thank you for being with us today and to answer our questions, and I look forward to your testimony, and I yield back my time.
Thank you, Mr. Womack. Administrator Guzman, thank you for being here today. Without objection, your full written testimony will be entered into the record. With that in mind, we would ask for you to please summarize your opening statement in 5 minutes.
Good morning. Good morning, Chairman Quigley, Ranking Member Womack, and members of the committee. Thank you for the invitation to be here and for the opportunity to discuss SBA's programs in response to the COVID pandemic. When I appeared in the Senate Small Business Committee as a nominee not too long ago, I mentioned how this unprecedented crisis for our nation's 30 million small businesses had created a sense of urgency to work harder, think more creatively, and build more collaboration to meet the desperate need presented by this moment. And in my first 2.5 months, I can share with you that my has intensified. And I have to share how proud I am of my incredible mission-driven team at the SBA, who, despite having had to scale at a high intensity the past year plus, remain incredibly committed to our nation's entrepreneurs. They've been working around the clock to deliver the American Rescue Plan's crucial relief programs to ensure our small businesses can survive this disaster and get on the path to recovery, growth, and resilience. We are making significant progress, particularly in our efforts to reach small businesses owned by women and people of color and veterans who, because of longstanding barriers to capital markets and networks, suffered disproportionately from this pandemic as well, and by many accounts weren't able to access relief. We're seeing the impact. The latest economic reports show that small business jobs have begun to rebound and proprietors' income levels have begun to recover. And we're hearing from the small businesses we serve that both our traditional and our new relief programs have created vital lifelines, like that case in Arkansas that the ranking member just referred to. Earlier this month, we successfully launched $28.6 billion Restaurant Revitalization Fund. As of Monday, when the application portal closed, we'd received more than 372,000 applications, representing over $76 billion in requested funds, including strong reach to food and beverage businesses owned by women, veterans, and people of color, those socially and economically disadvantaged businesses as well, who, as directed by Congress, received priority access to the program initially. And we're reaching the smallest of the small food and beverage businesses as well, with 1/3 of the total funds set aside just for them, including a specific set aside I created for businesses with revenues of $50,000 and under. I'm proud of how we rolled out this program in under 2 months while focusing on my key priorities of meeting small businesses where they are and integrating a customer-first, technology-driven, and equitable approach. We also launched the $16.2 billion Shuttered Venues Operators Grant Program. And as of today, the SVOG program has received more than 13,000 applications for approximately $11.2 billion in requested funds. We started distributing our SVOG funds this week, and we hope to continue to help our nation's venues hold on until they can bring back the performances and experiences that are the lifeblood of our American culture. Through our Paycheck Protection Program, PPP, and our Economic Injury Disaster Loan Programs, EIDL, we've now gone beyond that $1 trillion in relief. And so far in 2021, 95% of PPP loans have gone to small businesses with fewer than 20 employees. Our priority across all our relief programs is to get funds into the hands of small businesses swiftly, efficiently, and equitably. At the same time, we're also committed to maintaining a high level of oversight to minimize fraud and abuse while elevating transparency and open communication. We have implemented controls and oversight to better achieve the balance and reverse some of the previous fraud challenges that initially plagued EIDL and PPP programs. I was pleased to hear both GAO's Bill Scheer and SBA's Inspector General Mike Ware say in a recent House Committee hearing that transparency at the SBA has improved under my watch and that our relationship is off to a very good start. There is a lot of work to do, but we're working diligently to ensure funds get into the hands of the businesses for whom it was intended. Beyond our COVID relief programs, we're also looking to the future and our nation's economic recovery with an eye toward equity. Small businesses are starting to reopen, but they're still reeling from major revenue losses, and most expect recovery to take more than 6 months. This means that we will continue to see the need for capital, which is why SBA is exploring all options to open up capital access, including direct lending. Additionally, we know that the best thing we can do for our small businesses is to help our nation recover from COVID and get our marketplaces and main streets back to normal. With more than 61% of adult Americans who have taken at least one shot of the COVID vaccine, we're making progress. The SBA is doing its part by getting the word out to our small businesses about the American Rescue Plan's tax credit available to them that provides paid leave to employees receiving or recovering from a COVID vaccination. There is so much more work to do. As the voice for America's small businesses and innovative startups, I will be leveraging every tool at my disposal to bring businesses back, create jobs, and build an equitable economy that works for everyone in all regions. I look forward to partnering with you to give all entrepreneurs the tools they need to start, sustain, and grow into the future. Thank you, Chairman Quigley and Ranking Member Womack, and all the members of the committee for the opportunity to appear before you today.
Thank you. We'll now begin with questions. In December, Congress established the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant Program to support live entertainment venues that have sat empty since the start of the pandemic, over a year for many. While many other businesses were able to adjust their operation to at least adapt to the new normal, the live events industry was forced to shutter almost completely. My district, which includes the north side of Chicago, among other areas, has more live performances venues than almost any other congressional district. We're looking forward to seeing shows at the Metro and the Vic and so forth again. But many of those businesses were hanging on a thread and anxiously waiting for the grants to be awarded. Tell us a little bit about what those challenges were getting that stood up and what caused the delays in the disbursement of funds.
Thank you. Yes, we've seen that some specific industries were not able to access PPP in the same way, as many of them were closed, first to close and probably last to fully reopen, like shuttered venues across the country. And as I mentioned in my opening, we've seen over 13,000 applications submitted. Of that, 12,000 were under 50 employees or less. So we're also talking about smaller entities as well. So these grants to recover on revenue are really critical for them. The SBA did work to deploy this as soon as possible. Obviously when, this was a very complex program that we had to stand up with multiple different entities, from producers to stage venues, folks in the control of the building and those not, of those operators. So very unique eligibility criteria for each type of entity. But we worked closely with industry to make sure that we could stand this up in a way that was navigable for them. But as a result of the complex eligibility, it has been a little bit longer to implement, and we experienced some technology issues when we first launched nationally, without any pilot. So I do, I think what's key about this program is that we have been getting funds out this week. Finally, it's not soon enough, and we are working diligently to try to process these as soon as possible.
Is there still issues with the processing or going through this or technology, or is it now just catching up?
It's a combination as we continue now to work to the important part of actually reviewing eligibility and disbursement. we're still implementing, and so, but those are starting to roll out. It was just a longer, more complex build. One thing to keep in mind is that we do use the rule of two to make sure that we have strong controls in place on this program. And so there is a manual review as well because of the complexity of this program. I mean, there's very prescriptive nature of this. For example, I mean, we have applicants having to prove that they have a lighting rig as an example. And so, because of that, that's taking a little bit longer for review, but where our team is pushing these out as quickly as possible now moving forward, and we'll continue to work with our vendors on the technology to continue to streamline as quickly as we can.
Sure, we know the need is great in the industry, yet the cumulative amount requested so far is below what was anticipated. Do you have any sense of understanding why the demand wasn't as high as we thought it would be?
We have seen all of the different priority groups apply in the beginning at the outset, and so we're not we're not sure. We're not hearing anything specific from the industry in terms of people's inability to access the program. We still continue to get new applications submitted every day. However, we know that there's a supplemental at the end, and the industry continues to promote and make sure that people are aware of this program.
Very good. Mr. Womack.
Thank you. In that COVID package in March, $29 billion for the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. You got double the amount of applications. As a matter of fact, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you got about almost $29 billion worth of requests from the prioritized groups, which would tell me that the prioritized groups are going to be taken care of. However, a whole lot of other folks that were not in the priority groups, the disadvantaged businesses and what have you, veterans, that people not in those groups are going to be on the outside looking in. Is that a correct assessment?
Congress had required a specific priority period. However, we also put set-asides in for small businesses, and so we have already started processing non-priority applicants as well, and funding will be dispersed across the board.
And as I said in my opening remarks, got some concerns about the immigration status of people applying for some of these funds. Is it possible that illegal immigrants operating restaurants are going to get grants out of this program?
All of the businesses will be tax-paying businesses operating in and established in the U.S. We are funding across the board those businesses that can establish an eligibility and identity, and we're following all the rules from that perspective. So we do know that restaurants are a critical pathway for so many immigrant communities. It's an entryway into our capitalistic country. So we know that those people are also equally working hard to create jobs. If they are tax paying and have the proper documentation, then they are eligible for the program.
What is that documentation?
You can have a Social Security, EIN number, I-10, and these are broadly food and beverage businesses. Remember, it's not just restaurants as well. We've defined it broadly so that it does include, we've defined it as food carts and caterers, so there could be independent contractors in there as well.
All right, I want to shift to PPP for just a minute. A couple of questions about it. One, what is our current status right now? How much, as far as the application process, the forgiveness of loans, the amount of money that has gone out, any residual amount of money that has not? Can you just give me a Reader's Digest version of where that program stands today?
Yeah, I'm really pleased to see the impact of that bipartisan PPP, and I do continually hear from businesses like you that was a turning point for them when they got that PPP loan, and it helps keep them afloat during this time. I can report that the agency has nearly exhausted all of the initial PPP funds that were allocated by Congress, and so we have just 3 more days. I guess it's the 28th. The end of the month is the final time. We're in the process of finalizing all those hold codes, issues that maybe the bank or the SBA had to resolve those between us so that we can process all those final applicants through the system. And of course, in the final days, the CFIs, the community financial institutions, which are the CDFI banks, the local banks, as well as the CDCs and minority institutions, were processing billions of loans through the system as well for that set aside. So we've really seen this program leveraged all the way to the end, and SBA is working through those final loans now in these final days.
And is it your opinion that that we're on the tail end of this thing now and not going to need additional relief, or what are you hearing from small business?
I am still hearing that there's interest in the PPP program. Folks who have not, maybe they haven't gotten their second, or they still never were able to access the first. And so I still continue to hear that there's some demand, but it is, definitely winding down. We do have other relief programs available as well, with the EIDL program, of course, it's a loan, but low interest, long term, and then the targeted EIDL for low income communities. But we can report that, of course, this year nearly 275 billion was loaned in 2021, and we saw that they were going to those smaller entities who weren't able to access it in previous rounds and at the very beginning. So employees 20 and under. So we are seeing trends of those smaller finally accessing it.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to yield back and come back for a second round. I'm going to have a question about waste, fraud, and abuse in the OIG. So we'll be prepared for that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Very good. Mr. Cartwright.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Administrator Guzman. Nice to sort of be with you, and congratulations on your confirmation. I want to follow up about the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. Independent restaurants really are the cornerstone of communities across the country. And from the outset of the pandemic, it was clear that this crisis would take a devastating toll on these small businesses, the restaurants. So I spent the better part of this past year fighting to secure targeted relief for Northeastern Pennsylvania independent restaurants. And now that relief is finally on its way to our restaurants, I want to ensure the SBA is taking every precaution to see that it gets into the right hands. So the first couple of questions are about that. Number one, what internal controls did the SBA put in place to ensure that people engaged in fraud did not crowd out legitimate small businesses from the Restaurant Revitalization Fund program? And number two, how effective have those controls been in ensuring Restaurant Revitalization Fund program integrity?
Thank you for that. Yeah, across the board, we have made controls, implementation, fraud mitigation a priority. We want to ensure consistency across all of our programs, and have been working to make sure that the money gets into the hands of those that it's intended. We have looked at best-in-class practices across our programs. Our Office of Capital Access is implementing the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. Of course, leveraging some of those, automated and systematized, fraud risk controls across the program. We, continue to see that, of course, we're requiring, tax documents as well as, ensuring that eligibility is verified. So we feel strongly, and we've been working in collaboration closely with the IG on all of those controls. We're trying to design and implement those controls at the front end of all of our programs, and work with them collaboratively to make sure that there's comfort level. So we feel good about the controls that we have in place. One of the great features of the restaurant program is that we try to leverage technology and also private partners. And so we also have a lot of the point of sale vendors who have existing restaurant clients who they're directing to the site and providing data and as well. So that's also a strong existing base of restaurants that we can leverage to put into the system.
Okay. Thank you for that, and let's continue to talk about that, because fighting fraud is not a one-time deal. It's a continuing fight. I want to skip to the amount of the funding. Administrator Guzman, you noted in your testimony that when the Restaurant Revitalization Fund portal closed this Monday, more than 362,000 applications had been submitted with a total of $75 billion in funding requested. That is more than 2.5 times the entire amount that Congress allocated for the Restaurant Revitalization Fund program. 2.5 times more money applied for than we allocated to it. So the question is, do you believe more targeted relief for restaurants is warranted?
I would be happy to continue to provide data. Our final data, showed that there were actually over now, I can report over 372,000 applications received and over 76 billion. I think obviously there's a huge deficit. We've heard from the Independent Restaurant Coalition and the National Restaurant Association that additional funds would have been needed. That's proven in the demand of the applications, and so we're happy to work with Congress to make sure that you have the data that you need to make that decision and then implement it on your behalf.
Well, Administrator Guzman, I happen to agree with you that more funding is needed, and that is why I have called for the Restaurant Revitalization Fund to be replenished. I don't have enough time to ask the whole next question I have, but so, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to yield back.
We'll get back to you. Mr. Womack, I believe that Mr. Joyce would be next in line. Is that correct?
Would be correct.
Mr. Joyce.
Thank you, Chairman Quigley and Ranking Member Womack, and greetings, Administrator Guzman. As you may know, I joined several of my colleagues in sending you a letter back in March, noting disagreement on the SBA's decision to exclude air shows from the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant Program. Northeast Ohio hosts one of the strongest air shows in the country on Labor Day weekend every year, the Cleveland National Air Show. This is a big economic driver for the region, creating jobs, supporting many small businesses who contribute to the event, and it's a tremendous amount of civic pride watching the Blue Angels, no matter where you live in Northeast Ohio, they seem to fly over during the point of it. Can you comment on how the SBA came to its determination that air shows would not be eligible for this program designed for live industry small businesses?
Yes, the full statute was reviewed, of course, and it was a very prescriptive statute. It limited our flexibility in many respects, and so we took exactly what we were given and designed the program that way. So I appreciate the need for additional types of operators to get into the program, but working with our Office of General Counsel, we interpreted the statute and we're stuck to that prescription.
I got one guy in the district. He does nothing but food at air shows around the country, and the pandemic completely broke his back. But anyhow, there's been a lot of important discussion about the actions of Congress and the SBA over the last year in an effort to help small businesses. As more and more Americans are vaccinated and normal economic activity returns, I also want to look at the future and consider how we can help small business reboot and contribute to our economic recovery as we return to the normal, return to normal, and it's going to bring its challenges with that. One challenge I've heard constantly from small businesses in my district is they cannot find workers to meet the demand for their services, a demand which is coming back quickly in many industries. I'd like to know if we have any ideas why small businesses are having this problem and what challenges you see ahead for them in this post-pandemic recovery.
I have heard a full range of concerns. I think number one, across a lot of the data is that the COVID environment, the risks, for health issues, as well as the resulting, care economy issues that come with it, meaning, the small children at home limits your ability to work. I think those issues are paramount. So that's why the SBA has launched an initiative to do extensive outreach to our small businesses to make sure that they know about those tax credits from the American Rescue Plan, to give paid time off to their employees to go get the vaccination. I think, returning to normalcy in the marketplace and getting our kids back in school and in childcare is, I think, a really critical thing. So that's first and foremost. And, we continue to work across our field offices with the Department of Labor to make sure that our field offices as well as our resource partners are equipped with as many tools as possible to help connect businesses to workforce and help them overcome some of those challenges.
That's great. But here in the district as well, many small finance industry businesses who provide critical service to communities and played a key role during the pandemic are now being denied when they apply for forgiveness of their PPP loans, despite Congress's intention that forgiveness be accessible to businesses in a wide range of industries. Can you explain how and why the SBA's interpretation of the law written by Congress is preventing many finance companies from receiving forgiveness on their PPP loans?
I would have to look in specifically to that industry. I know overall, over 60% of the first round of loans have been processed for forgiveness and cleared by the SBA. There's a small percentage of them that are being held. I understand that less than 1% are over that 90-day requirement that we're going back and forth with some of the banks on. So I do, I would look forward to finding out a little bit more detail and make sure that we're addressing that specific issue. So thank you for flagging.
Thank you for all you're doing, and hopefully we can continue good work and get our economy back up and roaring together. With that, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Bishop.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Administrator Guzman, for being here and for your service. I'd like to ask you, with regard to the Office of Entrepreneurial Development, the fiscal year 22 budget request includes an increase of $49 million above the FY21 request for the Entrepreneurial Development Program, of which $31 million is for programs to support women, people of color, and other underserved entrepreneurs. The Entrepreneurial Development Program oversees the network of programs and services that support the training and counseling needs of small business. And of course, the training for small business provided by the program is especially important for small and rural communities, which often lack access to technical expertise to assist with their business development. How will the SBA utilize this additional funding to better support women, people of color, and other underserved entrepreneurs and rural entrepreneurs that don't have access to that technical expertise?
Thank you for that. Yeah, we do know that bold action is needed to address some of those racial inequities and ensure that all of our entrepreneurs, no matter what region or what background, have fair access to the resources and opportunities. And of course, our Office of Entrepreneurial Development plays a key role in providing technical assistance and connection to all of these relief programs as well. And so the discretionary request does include that $31 million increase over 2021. Of course, the full budget will be released later today, but the focus will be on trying to help underserved entrepreneurs, better connect to capital, better connect to marketplaces, and better connect to networks that really support them in the ecosystem, so that they can either start up or grow. We're really going to be focusing on making sure, especially in recovery, that that's possible through our other programs at the SBA.
Thank you. The American Rescue Plan established the Community Navigator pilot program to help set up networks nationwide that will reach the smallest businesses, with a priority focus on those that are owned by socially and economically disadvantaged individuals, as well as women and veterans. It's intended to bridge the gap between local entrepreneurs and SBA's resources and programs. A lack of access to these governmental programs has long been an issue across my district in southwest and middle Georgia. So how will small businesses and entrepreneurs be able to utilize this program to gain fair access to programs that are offered by the SBA?
Thank you for that. I'm really excited about the Community Navigator pilot program. We just released the notice of funding opportunity this week, so that national, local governments as well could access this resource. We're trying to get more hyper-local with local trusted sources, so that we can better connect and help businesses navigate the resources that are available to them. This will, of course, augment our strong field presence, as well as our resource partners in the field, like our small business development centers and women's business centers, which have been expanding recently, including to 5 HSBC locations. And so With the Community Navigator pilot program, though, this gives us a unique opportunity to branch out with new partners, to get more local and to get trusted advisors to work with local communities that are underserved, rural, urban, and especially, those with the women, veterans, and socially and economically disadvantaged individuals. So we do look forward to implementing this. In the next few weeks, we'll be able to report more in terms of who's been awarded to help us become these navigators nationally to support entrepreneurs across your districts.
Okay, thank you. The 22 budget request includes 10 million to facilitate access to capital investments to help small businesses become more resilient to climate change and support the clean energy economy. How is SBA going to utilize the funding to help support small businesses in their efforts to combat the effect of climate change and build clean energy?
Thank you for that. And that has been our focus, is to try to make sure that when we're looking across our programs, that we're trying to be more customer centric and accessible to all businesses. And the smallest of the small have a more challenged access to our programs typically. That same would apply to combat climate change. We do know that small businesses will play a critical role in combating climate crisis as well, through modernization, as well as innovative goods and services. But in terms of their own resilience, we hope that we can continue to do the kind of extensive outreach, especially leveraging the Community Navigator pilot program, to really reach businesses to build resilience to combat climate change.
Thank you. My time has expired. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Pocan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it. And thank you, Administrator Guzman. It's a pleasure to meet you. Look forward to working with you. I'm a small business owner for 32 years, a very small business, under about a handful of employees, but not many people in Congress come with that background. I'd like to get to several areas, but let me start just with one that may be a little unpleasant, but we've had some of the most difficult time of dealing with any federal agency is dealing with SBA on communication, especially in the last year, on behalf of our caseworkers, working on behalf of constituents, and quite honestly, even on the policy side of our Washington office. I know you've only been there since March, but what can we do in a very brief amount of time to try to improve those relations? Because it really has stood out as one of the most difficult agencies to work with.
Yes, and just to, it's in my time here, I've implemented a culture of transparency and collaboration. We know that there have been failures on communication, even interdepartment, as well as in the field offices to support your constituents. And so one of the big indicators of that is I changed access from our field to give them direct access to our platforms, to give updates on our Office of Disaster Assistance and our Office of Capital Access. That was limited in the past. And so we've opened that up as an example, and a great example of that collaboration that we're seeking and that openness. So we are working hard every day to try to change that, and we look forward to working with you locally to make sure your constituents get more timely information.
I appreciate that, just because, again, it has stood out, and especially being a small business owner, I think I hear from a lot more small business owners, and it just really was difficult in the last year. I appreciate any changes we can do on that front. Having said that, I do think, this recession was different than, some other recent recessions. In 2008, it felt like there was a general malaise, except for maybe the housing industry obviously had a very, specific hit. This time there were winners and losers, right? If you were a grocery store or liquor store, someone who dealt with people who were spending more time at home, you were doing better than ever. But if you were a restaurant or bar, the meeting industry, tourism, you might have been completely zeroed out as a business. And it was a very unusual recession, I think, in that sense. We saw the need for the PPP, and you're out of funds already again on PPP for the demand. The Main Street Alliance and the Small Business Majority have expressed the need for more unrestricted direct grant assistance to hard-hit small businesses. And, I can tell you very personally and specifically that I had difficulty in conveying some of my concerns in the last year as we were putting plans together for small business, because, and I hate the term micro business, but that's what people seem to be using these days for under 20 employees. But, using gross sales is a gross mistake, is what I would call it. So when we were saying, in order to get that PPP loan, which was vital to so many small businesses, that second time you need a 25% drop. Well, many small businesses might have taken on lower margin sales in order to survive. So their gross numbers mean nothing compared to their profit that they actually are using, their operating expenses to pay their employees with. The same is true of startups. If you keep increasing sales, you can't necessarily compare a year ago to now. You could be down in sales, but your sales could be up. But that's the growth cycle, and that's where most of the jobs these days are started. So what can we say specifically about providing any assistance? Is there any ideas you might have to different criteria as the Main Street Alliance is looking at, or I've just explained? Because I unfortunately still see some sieve holes that I think, hopefully we could be innovative and try to figure out how to fix.
I appreciate that. And, I definitely have my own experience as a small business owner, including as an independent contractor at different occasions. And so I appreciate the challenges. And, I do think that, the way that we design our programs is really critical for who's going to access them. That dictates who can better leverage the program. So we're open to exploring options as we look to expand on recovery.
Are you looking at any specific programs right now, or is this something we're going to need to probably try to initiate with you?
There's nothing specific. All our programs right now do look at that revenue line, and so in terms of the relief programs, and so we will need to think creatively and out of the box as we develop programs for recovery and look at all of our programs from a new lens as well.
And it sounds like you do understand a couple of those sieve holes I mentioned, right? Startups where it won't work, and a small business. If you're really small, gross revenues don't necessarily mean anything if you took on business that might have lower margin, that you're still in the same bad place you might be in.
And if I could add as well, Congressman, that we do have, of course, the Small Business Innovation Research Grants, Office of Investment and Innovation, growth accelerators. We do want to lean into that startup ecosystem and really provide support. And so we'll be leaning into those innovation assets at the SBA as well.
Great. Thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Ms. Kirkpatrick, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Secretary Administrator Guzman, for being here to answer our questions today. I just want to ask you about a couple of issues that are important in my district. So I want to take us back to April of 2020 to the first round of the Paycheck Protection Program. As I'm sure you remember, the rollout didn't go quite as smoothly as we had hoped. But by the time the dust settled after the first tranche, it was very clear that business in certain districts had fared far worse than those in others. Unfortunately, Arizona was one of the states that struggled the most. While the scales eventually evened out after additional funding was distributed, it still concerns me that there was a gap between the states. Of course, the PPP also faced other issues, namely the exclusion of CDFIs during the first round, requirements implemented by private vendors. Ooh, I've got to sneeze here. Excuse me. Excuse me. Lack of clear guidance from the SBA. So I hope that in your new role as administrator, you have been taking steps to ensure there is equity in the way COVID relief programs are administered and avoid some of the pitfalls we saw with the PPP rollout. To that end, how has the SBA been working to ensure the RRF and SVOG are equitably distributed? And are there any lessons you have taken from some of the PPP rollout struggles?
Thank you for that. And I was California's advocate for small business at the time. And so dealing with COVID directly and experiencing the initial PPP rollout as well. So I can appreciate, since the state was initially was having challenges accessing the PPP as well. We faced similar challenges. Eventually, of course, got back on track. I think that across the board, what we've tried to emphasize, first off, leveraging the resources we have. We have a great field network. We have a great resource partner network, and we wanted to make sure the communication was strong with them. For SVOG, there were so many different industries included, but we have gone above and beyond, reaching out to stakeholder groups and making sure that their members, by industry, had the information that they needed, that they were involved in the process at the front end, as well as receiving the outreach once the program was launched. And so, and on RRF, which was a much broader program in terms of the numbers, we have done over 1,000 events across the country, working again with industry, the National Restaurant Association and Independent Restaurant Coalition, but as well, lots of ethnic chambers and local groups and across the country to make sure that we were reaching as many people as possible, reaching out to ethnic media sources, those trusted voices in communities, as well as veterans groups. I think I did, 20 veterans group calls in 1 week, just to try to make sure that all of these organizations had the information they needed to distribute to their members. So it's really about that connection to resources, which is why the Community Navigator pilot program is so fundamental to all of our programs. You can launch something, but if it's not implemented and successfully reaching those who need it, then it's not as effective. So we hope to work in partnership with you to continue to do a better job across our states through the resource partners and field offices that we have.
Thank you. I appreciate your answer. I really do. I have one other question. Being from Arizona, the concerns of our tribal nations are always top of my mind. A consistent theme I take from meetings with tribal leaders is they don't feel the federal government prioritizes their needs, whether that is related to COVID response or more broadly. As it relates to the SBA, I want to make sure these communities have the same access to capital resources in all of the SBA and its partners can provide. As SBA administrator, can you please share how you intend to prioritize Native communities and build on what the SBA has already undertaken?
Thank you for that. Yes, we definitely, count tribal communities as part of our critical outreach to ensure both through the Community Navigator pilot program or through our normal outreach that we're able to connect to those entrepreneurs, those Native-owned businesses. And that's across the board through our capital programs, as well as our government contracting programs, where they're included as disadvantaged businesses, and so that they can leverage the federal marketplace. So we are all in on trying to ensure that tribal communities have access to our programs. In California, I did the same and worked collaboratively with our tribal entities and leaders to try to make sure that we were meeting their needs and reaching their communities.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I yield back.
Thank you. Ms. Torres, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Administrator Guzman, for joining us today and including this robust conversation around how we can help our economy come back, in this, as we are beginning to vaccinate more people and turn things around. I want to focus your attention to cybersecurity threats as it relates to small businesses. One survey shows that 23% of small businesses in the US suffered from a cyber attack in the last year. Cyber attacks are costly for these small businesses in our economy and can put small businesses at significant risk of going out of business. As the threat of cybersecurity grows, there needs to be emphasis on supporting and protecting them. So for this reason, fiscal year 21 FSGG appropriations included a $3 million to fund the cybersecurity assistance pilot program. Can you provide an update as to the status of this initiative, and what else is the SBA doing to help the small business community protect themselves from cyber attacks?
Thank you so much. Yes, the SBA is in the midst of drafting the final funding announcement for the cyber assistance pilot project that we will be launching. The team has been assessing best practices and state programs and plans to make sure that the NOFO is reflective of that. And so it should be fully cleared and posted in the very near term, and we'll make sure that your staff receives that for sharing with you. As per the legislation, the awards will be geared towards states can assist small businesses. I know in California, we had our own programs on cyber risks for small businesses and trying to get them better equipped. I think the silver lining of the pandemic is that small businesses have adopted technology at really high rates, whether that was through e-commerce pivots or more operational type of support for their organizations. And so I do feel that this is going to increasingly become a very critical issue for our small businesses as far as their long-term resilience. The $3 million that was appropriated in this pilot, we do anticipate a handful of state awards will be awarded through the NOFO. So we look forward to that important resource. But in addition to that, we will continue to work with our federal partners who lead on this issue in terms of best practices, the FBI, NIST, and others, as well as our grantee resource network, our SBDCs, SCORE, WBC, VBOX, Veterans Centers, just to make sure that that America's small businesses are aware of the tools that are available to them and solutions.
They hold a lot of data and information of consumers. So we want to make sure that, we're with that in mind, that we are protecting the most vulnerable people that are trying to do right by shopping small. We want to continue to encourage that, but we also want to make sure that they feel confident enough that their information, when they swipe their credit card, that information is going to be protected. Thank you, Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you. Ms. Lawrence, please.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman, for this meeting, and Ranking Member Womack. Administrator Guzman, small businesses, and especially the restaurants in the city of Detroit, it was the small business restaurants were a part of the comeback of our city. And as you know, May 24th, the Restaurant Revitalization Plan has received more than 300,000 applications, with a total of $75 billion in funding requested. This is a program that's in high demand and critical to my state. I would appreciate your assessment on where we are with this program and how do we address the demand that has been followed. And before you answer, I wanted to add just the Congresswoman Kilpatrick mentioned it. It was painful what we had to go through during this pandemic to connect resources to our small business. And the definition of insanity to keep doing the same thing, expecting different results. I would love to hear from you, your vision. I know you're new in the job. How do we, because it's the assumption that if you're a business owner, you have all these resources, you're connected. And a lot of these small restaurants literally have a great recipe from their mother and just get brick and mortar and open up a restaurant. The food is good, but their business sucks. So what can we do? That industry is so important to the economy of a lot of major cities. What are we going to do with connecting the resources? And I don't mean you sit there in a building and you say, we have these resources, and if you go online and connect it, what are we going to do innovative and different so that we can build back better and with more people included in your department resources?
Thank you for that. Yes, we know that restaurants are the third largest source of jobs in this country, and so we're very excited to swiftly get out the Restaurant Revitalization Fund program. Demand is definitely outsized beyond the 28.6 billion. It's now over 76 billion. The program portal has closed to new applicants as a result, and so we definitely see that we're not going to meet the needs of all these restaurants. And yes, I agree. I mean, they've been first to close and highly impacted and had slim margins to begin with, and so are really operating under challenges. Many of them have expressed the fact that PPP didn't necessarily work for them if they were fully closed, and so they have had challenges across the board. So we, we are ready to continue to implement this program if additional funds are awarded and provide you with whatever data that you need to make those decisions in Congress. I do think, though, connection to resource is not working. I would agree, and President Biden's Community Navigator Pilot Program, he was very passionate about that program, and because he recognizes that not all small businesses have that connection, and let alone your CPA on speed dial that they don't have. They may not even know about a small business development center or the SBA. And so we do need to do a better job. I plan, as I did in California, to work extensively in local systems and with private partners as well. SBA is great at leveraging public-private partners, as demonstrated through its longstanding loan programs, and we need to do the same across the board. So I want to be, customer first, technology driven, and equitable, and that includes collaborating and being open and transparent, and working to ensure that people see SBA as a pathway to growth for their businesses.
I want Administrator Guzman to personally invite you to Detroit. I would love for you, in your developing and improving the accessibility, to sit down with some of the our restaurant owners, or to hear, or even if you don't come, someone top in administration, your administration, to come and actually touch and smell and see the impact of the policies. To me, that, being in government over 30 years, that has had the greatest impact. And I want to thank you, and I hope to see you in Detroit. And just know that we hear that you need more funding for the restaurant revitalization. Thank you so much, and I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Lawrence. Administrator, I think you're invited to all of our districts to try our local fare. If you want, I'm sure Detroit's outstanding, but if you want real pizza, hot dogs, Italian beef, Chicago awaits. A quick question to follow up on Ms. Lawrence. Are we keeping a list of those at restaurants who applied, but were told that we're out of resources? Or are they being kept in line so that they don't have to start all over if and when we're able to charge up that fund again?
Yes, thank you for that, Chairman. Yes, they are. So our system maintains all the applicants, all applicants in the system.
In order that they hopefully can. And we're not discouraging anybody. Like, don't even apply, we don't have money, right?
Well, the portal itself did close on Monday.
Right, but for those who did apply before Monday. Okay.
That's correct. And it was completely open, and outreach was extensive to everyone. We asked everyone to apply based on the first in, first out.
Very good. Okay, thank you. Mr. Womack.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My dad always tells me that he's a wise guy, that you make your biggest mistakes in life under a couple of different conditions. One of those when you're really emotional, and number two, when you're in a hurry. And because we had this pandemic on our hands and really didn't have a playbook for it, we were doing everything we could to speed money out the door, that sort of thing. And in the given the theme of my dad's sage advice, I know that the speed at which some of this happened did cause some problems as well. And so I'm curious, whether it's PPP or the EIDL or the shuttered venue program, what have we learned through our Office of Inspector General? And, how can we take those lessons? First of all, claw back from some of these folks, but at the same time, learn so we can not make those same mistakes the next time around. When our playbook is a little bit more, when we have it on the shelf and we can pull it out and see what we did last time and how we can avoid those problems in the future.
Thank you for that, Ranking Member. Yes, I think that what we've learned is that commitment has to be at inception, and so that that commitment to balance speed with some strong guardrails, oversight, controls at the design phase, whenever that's possible, as quickly as possible, and that it's iterative as we go, because clearly defending against fraud is an ongoing battle, and we have to be as smart as those fraudsters out there. And so those two things, I think, they just have to be integrated across our program design, and that's what we're focusing on doing, making sure fraud teams are embedded within program offices, and that we have an enterprise-wide approach to fraud risk assessment and prevention. And so that's what we're committed to doing from a management perspective and structure. And I think across the board with these programs, though, I mean, clearly, speed is important as well, and efficiency and simplicity, because small businesses, as we've heard from so many, need assistance in not only connecting to the resources, but understanding the process. And so, leveraging technology tools to simplify so that, that we can still get speed, but with controls in place. And I think, we have to continue to learn from private sector best practices across the board, and we have a great opportunity to do that, knowing that we have one of the best public-private partnerships with our financial institutions through our lending programs. And so, I think that that culture of collaboration with IG and GAO will serve us well as we continue to design programs that focus on controls as well from the inception.
Well, I'm glad to hear a federal director at one of our agencies admit that the private sector does do a lot of great things, and we can learn from them. And it pleases me to know that you'll talk to the people that you represent out in the private sector and learn, because it's a matter of survival for them. And anytime we're going to throw billions, hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars at a problem, there are those lurking out there that want to get their piece of it, and will do a lot of nefarious things to get a hold of it. But thank you for your time. And like all my colleagues, we look forward to the day that you can visit Northwest Arkansas.
Thank you so much. I look forward to all these invitations.
Thank you. And as we try to go through a quicker second round, for those who still have an additional questions, we're gonna run at 3 minutes, beginning with Mr. Cartwright.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to follow up on Mr. Womack's theme of nefarious people, Administrator Guzman. As you well know, in recent weeks, the Department of Justice has ramped up its enforcement efforts to combat COVID-19 related fraud, including schemes targeting the Paycheck Protection Program, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, and unemployment insurance programs as well. Now, Administrator Guzman, we've not met before, but I serve as the chairman of the House Appropriations Subcommittee of Commerce, Justice, and Science. We fund the Department of Justice, so I'm going to be very interested to hear from you what your assessment is about how those joint Small Business Administration and Department of Justice coordination efforts are going. So specifically, my question is, what more can SBA, DOJ, or Congress be doing to ensure the SBA and the DOJ are efficiently and effectively working together to minimize fraud in the Restaurant Revitalization Fund program, or frankly, any other of these SBA COVID-19 relief programs?
Thank you for that question. Yes, we are committed to supporting investigations and convictions. And so obviously that's required that we support those investigations. We provide a lot of the information and then work with the DOJ and OIG and U.S. Secret Service and other law enforcement agencies closely to support those criminal investigations and actually recover funds dispersed under fraudulent pretenses. And so for example, in the EIDL program, we have over 160 staff members now. We've ramped up with the additional administrative funds to make sure that we're reviewing cases of fraud and that we have a dedicated support on a program that's been impacted by those fraud attacks. And so I think it does come to that collaboration and being open to support with information flow to ensure that those investigations are successful. We will continue to do that and would look for any suggestions as we dive deeper into this to see if the Attorney General or the Inspector General has any further recommendations. But so far, they continue to be thankful for that support that we're giving, we'll continue to support that.
Well, you're pretty new in the job, so I'm going to ask you that question a little bit later on in your tenure to get a retrospective review of how that collaboration has been going. And I thank you for your testimony and your time today.
Thank you so much.
Yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Bishop.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ms. Guzman. I was interested in your comment that you have learned a lot from your interaction and your collaboration with the private sector during the CARES relief programs. But one of the, and they worked very well for the most part, except that the complaints that I got were the programs that were administered directly by SBA, and the relief that came directly from SBA was very, very, very slow in getting out. And that the feedback was that the SBA was simply overwhelmed with the volume and just could not handle the capacity. So I wanted to ask you whether or not going forward you have sufficient IT infrastructure, whether you have sufficient personnel, those resources in order to be able going forward to avoid that being overwhelmed as you were, as the agency was, rather, you weren't not there at the time during the initial phases of that pandemic.
Thank you. I did serve previously at the SBA as a deputy chief of staff during the Obama administration, and this is a new agency. It has scaled from 40 billion to managing over $1 trillion in relief. And so, I'm never going to, deny the opportunity to be able to say that, of course, we need more, FTEs, more salary and expenses. However, across the board, what we're trying to do is, be as efficient as possible, leverage technology, leverage private partners and our great resource partners and ecosystems across the country to better support small businesses and help keep the SBA connected. We do recognize that customer service needs to be ramped up, and so we will continue to try to find creative ways to improve the services that we provide directly, as demonstrated on the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, which is a great example of how we provided excellent customer service.
I was really trying to get at whether or not the failures initially with the programs that SBA had to distribute themselves was a result of inefficiency, or was a result of lack of personnel, because that was such a backlog, and it seemed as if they just couldn't get it together.
The scaling up was, of course, challenging, and having to adopt technology and scale that really quickly as well. The administrative funding is really important. And of course, some of that administrative funding is expiring in September. We always appreciate no year money or extended times on all of these programs. They all have some end dates that are going to be coming. And so as much as SBA can collaborate with you to see about extending some of those would be great, so that we can continue to try to use technology and expand our temporary resources to support these programs.
Thank you. You're back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Pocan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks for the extra time. Mr. Guzman, I just want to wrap up that final bit of conversation I had. Do you agree that a single metric of a 25% reduction of gross sales does unfortunately not capture all businesses that needed assistance?
I mean, clearly, as been evidenced by SVOG, which has those revenue deficits, or the targeted idle advance that requires 30% loss of revenue, not everybody has experienced it that way. And so that's an underutilized program now that we're trying to use more effectively and do more outreach on. But that is always a challenge.
Great. I just want to know that others are hearing what I'm saying. I had some strong difficulties in the last year getting that across, and I know sometimes it's hard when we're writing a giant bill, but I hate seeing people left behind. Having said that, you probably saw the New York Times article in January of 21 talking about people receiving PPP loans of $100 or less. Clearly, that wasn't addressing the small businesses that had need. What can we do again about those small businesses left behind? And let me just say, technical assistance isn't the answer for every small business, right? If you're in the meeting industry, convention and meeting industry, there were no conventions or meetings, period. And you know, there are other people who may not have qualified by the other parameters. So looking for what we can do for the people that did get left behind.
And some simple changes were made in terms of, on the PPP, allowing for independent contractors to look at their Schedule C gross revenues instead. They could get more funding since they didn't have payroll. So tweaks like that are definitely of assistance. And I think that across the board, our current programs that we're implementing, obviously we're following and administering programs that are created by Congress, and so we are required to look at those, loss and revenues specifically across committee programs. But I welcome the opportunity to collaborate to figure out how we can make recommendations and provide you with data.
I would love to do that, and I'll take you up on that offer, as well as extend the offer that our chairman has. Madison, Wisconsin may not have some of the food that Mike mentioned at the same way that Chicago does, but certainly beer and cheese is going to be outstanding in my state. Final, very quick question: do you have an update on the EIDL targeted advance program and the supplemental targeted advance program? Where we're at on those?
Yes, we're still going through those initial priority folks who were people who had applied and received less than the 10,000. So over 10 million emails were sent out to them. And of course, not all of those were eligible to be in a low income area and had 30% loss in revenues. But we continue to try to process that. It's 1.5 billion processed so far on the program. But we are now starting to ramp up more extensive outreach, as in June, we'll open that up more broadly to those who applied after December 27th or those who did not apply at all. And so we will be doing outreach to low-income communities to try to get those funding out on targeted EIDL. With supplemental, similarly, we've done extensive outreach, for that 1.4 million invites. So far we've funded just under $350 million for that supplemental advance of 5,000, and if that's the same, it's got to be low income with higher revenue threshold of 50%. So we will continue to do outreach to try to make sure that we're connecting with those businesses.
Thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And obviously, if we were in person, I could see them more easily, but I don't see any members who have not had a chance at the second round. Correct me if I'm wrong. Otherwise, Mr. Womack, you get the last shot at any comments you want to make before we leave, including the restaurant's food that you would recommend when the administrator visits your district.
Well, it's
Mr.
always
Chairman?
good barbecue. We do have good barbecue, but we've got a lot of other things. We're famous for great hospitality down here, and I look forward to that. Chairman, thank you so much for the opportunity to have this interaction with Administrator Guzman. We're looking forward to working with you. And I know I speak for all of my colleagues that, there's no question what the backbone of our economy happens to be all these millions and millions of small businesses out there, and anything we can do to advance their cause, I think, is a great investment in the economy of the United States of America. So thank you for your service to our country. Look forward to working with you. And Chairman, thanks again for the opportunity to have this interaction today.
Sure. Did someone seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I would be remiss if I did not offer the administrator to come to taste all the fine cuisine of Northeast Ohio, whether it be at the air show or the walleye and perch that are caught in Lake Erie. Thank you.
We appreciate that. Madam Chairman, we just want to thank you for being here. Madam Administrator, thank you for being here, for your work. We know your work's not done yet, and we also know there's other industries that have been hit equally hard by the pandemic. I just throw out the gym and fitness industry, for example. Something like 80% of their clubs are small businesses, and they've lost about 1.4 million. So we're hoping to come to you, be ready when we get an opportunity to help that industry as well. But I want to wish everyone a safe and happy Memorial Day weekend, and we look